What's good, y'all? It's Brian. I know I keep looking different every single week, but I keep playing with my camera setup until I find one that I like. Um, and so, welcome back to the Tuesday night live stream. I got a lot to discuss, and I suffer for my art, bro. I really made an earnest attempt to listen to the Amanda Seals Jubilee versus, Amanda Seals or Black Radical versus 20 Black Conservatives. I tried. I really tried. I tried. Um, I know people get sick of me mentioning it, but I am a journalism major, and so I do have a strong sense of making sure that I try to do a lot of actual research and groundwork before I discuss things. And I tried. I'll get to that a little bit later. So a couple of updates with the channel. One, I just need a couple more followers on TikTok until I can start adding that to the live stream. I do feel like that's going to be a really beneficial addition to the live stream. And so I want to add TikTok to it, but I need a couple more followers. So if you are out there and you want to support your boy, go ahead and follow me on TikTok. I do post a lot of comic book stuff. I do post a lot of commentary stuff and some parenting stuff. And that's kind of the blend that we got going on here. I'm going to probably. I hate doing that. I'm going to be creating a Patreon just as a place where the uncut live streams can live. And I'm going to be doing some additional adjacent content that's really exclusive for Patreon. Just because there's specific things on YouTube that you're kind of limited in, and there's specific kind of commentary that I want to offer. And it's not necessarily, YouTube is not necessarily the place to deliver it. Plus, I want to start building a community around this thing because just from the love that I've gotten from posting clips, I'm really, really inspired to keep going. And doing the live stream thing because I've had a couple of false starts. The reaction hasn't been that great. And I finally found what I want to do and what I want to discuss. And so I'm going to be building an entire community around this thing. So I'm just kind of prepping y'all for that. And it starts on Patreon. I'm going to probably have a Discord server once I figure out what Discord is and how it works. I'm going to have a Discord server for ongoing discussions and stuff like that. And so you'll be seeing on Patreon, you'll see it popping up. And so please, I'm going to have a free tier where you can just join it just to see live streams. But if you want to support me, that'll be a good way to do that. All right. So Tuesday night live. Let me get link. Let me get Instagram on here. Yeah, Instagram's rolling, man. So Tuesday night live. This is what I want to do because what I'd normally do is I build my outline through the week. Something comes up and it'll be one of those ADHD flavored rants that I'll have in my car where I'm talking to nobody in particular, or the other side is I'm talking to my wife and talking her ear off about it. And so I wanted to, when I do these outlines, it's typically things that capture my mind or imagination or my stream of consciousness and will not let it go. And so typically that goes into the outline. And so some of these points don't necessarily relate. They're kind of desperate things, but these are different conversations that I've had throughout the week. So that's how I build out my outline. So if it looks scattershot, that's kind of what it is. It is scattershot. I'm always looking. Let me go ahead. I'm always looking. If you want to be a guest or pop on the live stream to have specific discussions, I am down for that. I'm going to probably start sending out invites to people to pop on the live stream to discuss specific things. Because I'm making Tuesday night kind of a destination for me. And so I'm always going to be on between 7:15 and 7:30 on Tuesdays and just kind of make that a normal thing. And so for people that want to hop on the live stream, share some opinions, I would love to do that. I did that with the Travis Hunter one. Everybody was kind of off for Christmas around that time. And so I did a live stream, sharing my thoughts on the stuff, the stuff around Travis Hunter and his girlfriend and stuff like that. And so I enjoy those kind of conversations. My boy Melvin came through on the live stream and we chopped it up about it. And that was a good time. So I want to do those kind of topics here. Another piece, and then I'm gonna get into the actual show. You're going to start seeing other kinds of content on the TikTok and probably the Instagram because I do want to kind of center the conversation around nerd stuff and comic books specifically. And so I am restarting my character issues because I used to write character issues. I used to write it every single week. That was a project, and it was fun because I got to read comic books and do my research and really give myself a history of these characters. And so basically, the idea of character issues is I'm taking characters that people may or may not know or that I think may be misunderstood or I think can be done better. And I'm kind of reviewing them, giving my little critique on them, but also telling you what their power sets are and things along those lines. The first one I did was Black Bolt. The Black Bolt one's important because he's going to be the Inhuman royal family's kind of featured in Marvel's current crossover, cosmic crossover event. Every year, Marvel has some kind of crossover event in the cosmic scale, and those are typically the best crossovers. Now there's been a couple where it's been weird. I'm trying to remember one where they're fighting plant people and um Swordsman came back as a plant person and it didn't make a lot of sense and it was kind of a rush thing. That was pretty terrible. And it featured Hulkling and it was just bad all the way around. But the cosmic crossovers are typically my favorite offering in terms of uh books from Marvel because I'm not huge in like I do get fatigued with crossover events, because what happens is when you have these big crossover events, they have this big, big bad that's going to alter the universe, and then nothing ever changes. Um, Nothing ever really changes. The cosmic ones stuff changes in the cosmic ones in the cosmic Marvel frame when they have gigantic crossover events. Typically, these are actually status quo changers. Sometimes they're not, but more times they are. You have your War of the Realms. You know, Empire was the one. Empire was ass. Like Empire was trash, bro. But One World Under Doom is a like Empire was bad, but the current ones are pretty good. And so all of them kind of tie into since they started doing Annihilation. Um, that's been kind of the thing that's been going on. So right now in the cosmic frame of the Marvel universe, they're fighting the Skrulls again after the Skrulls done like got everybody. Like the Skrulls have fooled the entire universe again. Again, I'm not gonna front like this is news. The Skrulls have fooled the entire universe again, and they're on the warpath. And so now the forces of like Nova, Silver Surfer, and all them have to kind of get together to stop it. And I'm actually enjoying it because we're getting some um, Galactic Empire of Wakanda stuff, which is always dope. And it's always really interesting when they take that lane. Um, and we're also getting some interplay between how some of these cosmic, some of these other civilizations in the Marvel universe interface with one another. The Shi'ar, and the Kree and the Skrull. The Hulks. They kind of put. I know Hulk is tied up in something right now. The Hulk run is pretty good. He's tied up with monsters on Earth, but also right now he's in outer space as War Hulk because his son got killed. I don't quite know how this lines up, but it does. And so I don't know how the time scale is working where the Hulk is in two places at once, literally. But they've really included they've included um a lot of aspects of the cosmic theater and kind of brought them together. So we're getting some of the stuff that made Annihilation good. And Annihilation to me is one of the signature events, like that goes in line with you know the Infinity Gauntlet saga and all that other stuff. So I'm excited about it. I'm enjoying it, and um, the reason why I featured Black Bolt, a lot of it has to do with um, because they brought the Inhumans back in a major way. And I'm excited about the Inhumans. I actually like the Inhumans. I know I follow my boy Comics Explain, Rob, and he is not as enamored with the Inhumans as I am. But I actually enjoy the Inhumans, and I'm interested to see what they do with them and how they bring them into the universe. Because the Eternals they tried with the Eternals. They really did. Like the AVX versus AX versus E thing, whatever they did. Yeah, that was a thing that happened. That was a thing that absolutely happened. And um it was not it wasn't it. And it was trying to center the Eternals as some kind of force in the Marvel universe, or actually it felt like it was de-emphasizing them and kind of putting them out to pasture. Um which was needed, because the Inhumans are, I mean, the Eternals are boring. I just I hate to put it out there like that, but the Eternals aren't really they're not really that they're not really that good. So um the newest the current cosmic crossover is Imperial. And so I'm actually enjoying Imperial. I want to see where it goes. Hopefully they don't blow this thing. All right. So that's why I did the character issues about Black Bolt. I have one coming out about Tim Drake. And so you'll be seeing that one popping up here, because Tim Drake's my favorite Robin. And I feel like he's the one that gets done the dirtiest. And to be quite honest with you, he's the Robin that a lot of current incarnations of Robin across media are built off of. The entire bow staff thing, Robin with the bow staff, was Tim Drake, not Dick Grayson. It was Tim Drake. Even though in the Teen Titans cartoon, it was basically said, I mean, they were saying this is Dick Grayson, but his characterization is more Tim Drakey than anything else. Earnest, serious all the time, over serious, over committed. Will have he's more Batman than Batman at times, and so that interpretation of Robin was really Tim Drake in the Teen Titans show from the 2000s. And so that's my boy, and I wanted to give him a little bit of love. So I'm actually doing my next character issues on Tim Drake. And send me more. If you have them, send me more characters you want me to break down in my own way. I have a pretty amazing retention of this stuff. Um, it's scary how much of this information I can retain and talk off the top of my head. And so I'm looking to see. I also did Cyclops, because I think Cyclops gets done dirty in a lot of media, because people are looking at the animated version of Cyclops from the early 90s as opposed to the Cyclops, which is, the Cyclops that is more Wolverine than Wolverine in the comic books, personality wise. So anyway, let's get into it. That's my comic book stuff. I'm going to be circling back to comic book stuff, so please stay tuned. So first things first, the first outrage that the first thing that had me kind of fuming was Trump is actually y'all El Presidente, Trumpito, your boy, is actually making a move which should be sending, which that has more of a chilling effect, and I think it really should be sending alarm bells for people. It should be sounding some alarm bells, but it doesn't. The way that they're trying to edit history that's taught at museums, and reframe it where it's giving history, because history has always been kind of a narrative thing, right? The winners typically write the history books, like, and they frame themselves as main characters the whole nine. But they're trying to rewrite the narrative of American history to erase any concept that America actually subjugated or harmed people. His words were, he wanted to emphasize he complained about the negative, how they only talk about the negative side of slavery. And a lot of this shit comes from when Julian, whatever face was, whatever bucket was on CNN talking about slavery for some reason, which I still haven't figured out. But that's where a lot of this shit came from. And so he wants to force museums to share his worldview and his cabinet's worldview of what history should be. And so wanted to frame the bright parts of American history and basically devoid of context. And here's what the problem with that is, because that's how history was taught for a long time in this country, where it had a really strong narrative bias towards good guys and bad guys, and always wanted to cast America as the good guy, and basically cast everybody else that America acted against as a bad guy. And it's I don't like to say it's one thing when it's this and one thing is that, but it's one thing when you're talking about America in a war with a country that's supposed to be a foreign country, right? But that also happened with Native Americans, where they got framed as the villains of the America story for a long, long time. They're the villains in every movie. There are villains in history, and really, you're talking about people that are fighting to maintain their land, their ancestral land, um, against people that are trying to take it and plunder it for resources. They did the same with, if you look at some of the old westerns, they did the same thing with Mexico. When Mexico encompassed Texas and California and pretty much the whole Southwest of the country, they always framed the Mexicans, at the Mexican government, as the bad guys. All they were doing was protecting their land. But there was a strong narrative bias to make America the protagonist of the story. That is very problematic. That's a problematic way of telling history. And it creates very stupid people. um, Here's the thing. When we share history, when we talk about what history is, um, there's a strong desire to not want to make the bad guys look as bad if they look like you. And America has this weird thing where the only race that is considered neutral in America, white is considered the neutral race in this country, a racial neutral. Well, that's the thing. But when we start talking from the context of history where it was racialized, the violence was racialized, um, the a racial neutral doesn't quite work, does it? And you can't cast yourself as a good guy when, you know, there's some pretty horrific things that are going down, um, to people that don't look like you because of the fact they don't look like you. When you try to strip out the context of history, because that's exactly what's happening, you're trying to remove the context and replace it with the narrative. And that is going to produce really stupid people. It's the same way that No Child Left Behind produced a mass group of people that are functionally illiterate. And we're seeing the residual impacts of those because a lot of those kids that ended up getting stuck in that program are now adults. And we're seeing adults that do not comprehend, they reading comprehension completely and utterly fails them because they were never challenged to, because all kinds of things that it devolved context while they were in school were stripped away. And so they never got to deal with complex things or things that seem ideas that seem to be in opposition with one another. They never had to think critically about things. And because a lot of the emphasis and focus was we have to teach it so they can pass these tests. And so you're seeing a lot of adults that do not really think critically about what they're consuming as long as they agree with it. And it's a basis, and I talked about it on earlier live stream. That's a basis for ideologues. When we're talking about ideologues, these are people that they literally ignore factual basis and substitute in their wishes, how they their beliefs and how they want things to be, as opposed to how things actually are. And No Child Left Behind really, um, maybe having trouble strumming the field. Oh, come on. Facebook, are you still with me? That's trash, yo. All right, so we made Facebook may be down for us. This is a StreamYard thing. I'm going to pull up Facebook just to make sure. Live TV, y'all, I apologize. I'm going to pull up Facebook just to make sure that we're still live on Facebook. Um, yeah, I'm pulling this out here and making sure that Facebook is still live here, because that's frustrating. I don't know how long Facebook has been down. Yeah, I think my Facebook is, well, we still going? Yeah, it cut me off about 12 minutes. Yep. Facebook cut me off. So I'm gonna reconnect to Facebook, y'all, and kind of see where we're at, because I've been going. So they missed like the last 7 minutes of this. All right, we're gonna reconnect with Facebook. Hopefully, um, I can get back on there. We're gonna remove Facebook and then add it again. All right, so we're trying again here. I want to connect Facebook to it. Hopefully Facebook's back with us. All right, Facebook's back with us. Hopefully it stays that way. So what I was talking about to catch y'all up is trying to strip context out of history. And I think that's kind of what the current administration is doing. They're trying to actually remove context clues from history so that people can look at history from a critical standpoint. And they're trying to add a narrative basis to it. So America's the good guy in the history. And acting like that's some kind of ideal way for our kids to be. Like I said, No Child Left Behind made a lot of stupid people. And I'm not saying that to be mean or cruel. What I'm saying is No Child Left Behind made a lot of people who cannot think critically, who cannot parse data, whose reading comprehension skills are in the gutter, and without any kind of outside assistance or help, or their parents kind of helping the education process, they were left adrift in these school systems. And so you have people who cannot think critically or read critically or cannot comprehend at an adult level. And we're starting to see that play out where people derive all their news strictly from social media, and it's done in a very, very, very unquestioning manner if it's from a source that they believe in. If it's a source that they think is bad or negative, then they don't want to take any of what they say at all at any point in time. Um, and that is not the way to consume media, but that's how we do it. So what's happening is, what we're setting the stage for is, if right now the Smithsonian is ground zero for this. He's basically wanting to create a narrative bias in the Smithsonian. And a lot of it is, and we're going to talk about, because a lot of it is centered around the slavery exhibit. So we cannot pretend like there's not a black element to this, because most of the discourse around this and his frustration with how the Smithsonian exhibits, the slavery exhibit runs, is based on the slavery exhibit. And you get a buffoon like Julian Michaels on talking about percentages of people that own slaves in this country, and our percentages were harvested from some source online who got it wrong, because when they said only a specific number of white folks owned slaves during slavery, it was taking the entire country as a whole, as opposed to removing the northern states where slavery was illegal, and then also removing Native Americans who may or may not have been, who by and large were not slave owners. There were some out there, I'm not going to front, but removing that, and then they didn't remove the actual black people, actual slave people. And so the percentage of potential of slave owners down south actually skyrockets. And then you also have to account for how many people who were employed in the slavery industry. How many insurance companies, that was their first major part of business, was insuring plantations and slaves. How many how many white folks who lived around the plantation weren't necessarily slave owners, but benefited from the business that the plantation generated for them. So we remove all that context from history and just teach it as this neutral thing, or even worse, teach it as America is the good guy, and you're setting the stage for very, very uneducated people in a very uneducated, unquestioning population. And that's probably the point. Okay. So I'll give you a little bit of rundown. Trump claimed the museums were too woke, whatever that means, because woke has kind of been stripped of its meaning. Black people in our community, we've been using woke off and on different parts of the community since the Harlem Renaissance. It's never stopped. We've never changed the meaning of it. We've never changed our internal meaning of it. We never decreased its usage or anything, but it was co-opted because and people talk about, well, language evolves. You can't evolve somebody else's language. Like, you can't take something that we use in our community, a term that we use within our community, talking to ourselves and talking to each other, and you decide that you're going to change the meaning of this, and then come back to the same people that originated the term and say, hey, this means something different now, even though you've been using it this entire time. So if they taken woke and made it apply to anything that's too niggerish, it's too niggy, we're not going to have it on there. Like, it's too niggy. And so that's kind of what that is. And so he complained only shows the negative side of slavery, which there is no positive side of slavery. There was no positive side of slavery. There was no positive side of slavery. Um, from an economic standpoint, the benefits that America saw from it have actually actively built the country, but it also was something that was actively draining the pockets and reserves of the South towards the end of the slavery, because what's happening was you're actually seeing work stoppages and Black people actually staging revolts during the Civil War. And a lot of those plantations were hemorrhaging money. He wanted exhibits to emphasize the bright parts of American history, whatever that means. And he doesn't know what that means. We're seeing somebody, and y'all did this to Biden, so I don't really care. And I did it to Biden. I'm not a huge Biden fan either, but this happened to Biden too. We're seeing somebody who's in obvious cognitive decline, and words are just falling out of his addled skull. And literally, his words are just reflections of impulses that flash across his brain. They have no connection to really anything. It's just whatever impulse is driving him in that moment. And I've seen people who act like that, where they're just, it's all impulse and no thinking tied to it. I don't necessarily align with that. And so letters sent to the Smithsonian and other institutions demanding changes because the boy king was mad because history made him feel bad about himself and his father, who was actually possibly part of the KKK in New York. Like there's some, if not, he was a funder of them. So there's that thing. He threatened funding reviews because history didn't make him feel good about himself. And this echoes the 2020 push for the 1776 Commission to rewrite history in the U.S. schools, and they're going to do it. It's going to happen. They're going, that's the play. They're telegraphing the play right now. One of the plays was, we're going to cause as much disruption in states where our opposition lives and cities where opposition lives, and that's happening right now. And we're also going to rewrite the books to reflect a history that we want to be taught, as opposed to history as it was. Okay. Museums aren't supposed to make you feel patriotic. That's weird. That's weird old shit to think that this museum, I feel patriotic after going to this museum. That is weird old shit. And if that's how you view things, you're too much of a simpleton to really appreciate what a museum is supposed to do. Sorry. It's just simple-minded nonsense. Slavery has too much negativity is an absurd statement. It's absolutely absurd. It was ritualized torture and violence. Fearless and I had this conversation earlier, and it was a point that he made, but then he expanded on it and kind of explained the context of it. But where his viewpoint was, slavery wasn't a personal thing to a point, but then it crosses over into personal. And my thesis is it's always kind of personal. Slavery is always personal. And when we look at some of the prisoner experiment, I mentioned it earlier on the live stream. The Stanford prisoner experiment, all you got to do is look at what that actually did, where that was supposed to be like a 2-week study and they cut it off at 6 days. And for those that don't know, it was a cognitive science one, and it's been challenged. Like, the outcomes have been challenged since, but really realistically what happened was they took 2 groups of college students. They made one group the prisoners and one group the jailers, and put them in a simulated prison environment. And what happened was they had to end the experiment 6 days into a 14-day run because it was getting way too violent. And some of the dehumanizing things that were happening to the prisoners, the kids that were cosplaying as prisoners, the guards were inflicting all kinds of torture and all kinds of other really horrific stuff on them. And they had to end the experiment before somebody got killed. When you otherize a group of people and you ascribe a status to them, there's no way for you to not take it personal. Society doesn't allow you to do that. And so slavery's always been personal. When they decided that the enslaved were the enslaved and the enslaved weren't human beings, instantly it became a personal thing. and it was highly personalized, and the violence specifically during slavery was personalized. And so, Fearless's contention was it went up to a point. My thing was it always was like there's always a personal element to it, even though there was a business, there's a profit motive behind it. It was always personal, like especially once you got over into the American theater of slavery. It was always personal. There was no two ways about it. Okay. We've talked about whitewashing too much, to the point where the term is almost losing is losing its punch. But they're basically trying to control a narrative to sanitize history, and then defer responsibility. Because at the end of the day, and this is the argument that a lot of conservatives make. Well, I'm not going to feel guilty. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilty. It's not about feeling guilty. I don't care if you feel guilty about slavery or Jim Crow or anything. I want you to acknowledge it happened and acknowledge that it built the framework for the country you currently inhabit. And when something is building the framework when something builds the framework of the house that you currently inhabit, you're always going to see the foundation. The foundation always remains the same. And so there's always going to be vestiges of that in the country that was built. Disagree with me, I don't care. Get your own live stream. And so this was something that was similar to what happened in Germany, where there was this big push to after the beer hall push, I think. And now I'm kind of freestyling a little bit based on what my knowledge of German World War II history was. But after the beer hall push, Hitler rose to power, and there was a lot of framing of specific things. Like first, it was removing women's reproductive rights, and then it was actually removing their status as people in society, and basically treated them as just breeding stock for the state. Like their job was just to have more German babies. This commentary is not new. These kind of commentaries, these big pushes for kids, and a lot of times it was because they have to bolster the numbers of Germans so that they don't get outpaced by the impure races. The purge of people that weren't born there, where they're purging people that weren't naturally born there. They were putting gay folks and black folks, because there were black Germans. People forget about there were black folks in Germany this entire time. The Nazis did operate against black folks. They did direct harm to black people. And they were putting black Germans into concentration camps just with the Jewish people. They actually had black folks, and some black folks were in zoos in Germany. That's how serious it was. But there's echoes of what happened there, where we're going to revise our history to cast us as the hero so that we can have a heroic context, heroic frame around our actions. And then that justifies any stuff we do in the future. There's parallels. You just need to look it up. I mean, seriously. And like I said, I don't want to dive too far into it because my knowledge of German history is shaky at best. I do know a little bit of how the entire thing with Hitler coming to power was. Okay. My biggest problem with this attack on museums is it's almost pivoting. It's almost giving a bias towards this innocence, where America's too precious to be faced with its past. It's ridiculous. Museums aren't supposed to make you feel, they're not supposed to make you feel patriotic. That's dumb. Go listen to that stupid "I'm proud to be an American" song if you want to feel better about it. Museums, that is not the job of museums. Museums' job is, one, to steal artifacts from oppressed people and display them against their will. And two, illustrate things, frame things in a way that actually accurately depict the past. At least that's what I would take museums as. So it's something I mentioned earlier with Fearless. We were talking about journalism and the standards of journalism. The way that I understand journalism, journalism is not supposed to be unbiased. Good journalism is not unbiased. Good journalism has a bias towards the truth. Strong bias towards the truth. So It's not supposed to be unbiased. History is not supposed to be unbiased. It's supposed to be biased towards the truth. This is insidious, and he's gonna absolutely redo all the way museums are. So just be prepared for it. Just like I've been telling y'all, I've been telling people that all the people that think that electoralism is dead, or all the people that think it's the end all be all, there's always an answer in between. And he's going, like, it's rule of law is dead. Like, right now it is a social contract that he's not observing. The courts are a social contract. If the executive doesn't observe the judiciary, then all of it is just a social contract. He can ignore whatever he wants to, and that's what's happening. And voting ain't gonna make it go away. Once once you let the worms out of the can, you're gonna need a bigger can, and you're in the constant state of finding a bigger can, and that's kind of where we're at. Switching things up, because I've been talking about this for 30 minutes. Comic books. That's a hell of a transition, isn't it? So the reason why I started Long Boxing While Black and then eventually Blerding While Dad was I wanted an outlet to talk about comic books from a Black perspective, because I don't feel like Black comic book nerds, I feel like we get flattened into the rest of the nerdverse, and we actually have very unique conversations about how we consume nerd related media, whether it's anime, whether it's comic books, whatever, sci-fi movies. We have a specific frame, and it's to me it's a more humorous kind of frame on how we view stuff. But I wanted to kind of do that and create a space where we can have these conversations. One of my oldest pet peeves, and it's one of the impetuses behind me doing character issues, like me writing that. When I first started writing character issues, this is what I had in mind. One of my largest pet peeves when it comes to comic books is I do not like characters with vaguely defined powers. I just don't. When we're talking about superhero books, because there's more than just comic books are more, for those that don't know, there's so many other comic books besides just superhero books. But I'm talking about narrowly and specifically superhero books. I do not like villains with vaguely described powers. It just, ugh. And so there was a lot of, for me, I do feel like I kind of went over the top, kind of gushing about how much I loved the Krakoa era of Marvel. And there were parts of it that were amazing. And initially when it first started, it was great. And then as they started progressing, you could start feeling them picking up momentum, but picking up speed, but not necessarily momentum. And then right at the end, when Marvel's like, okay, we need to end this thing, it was a screeching halt. And it just, they threw everything at it. And they kind of overloaded us, specifically with the Sins of Sinister stuff. And there's another one that's going on right now, where it's not Sinister that is the primary focus. It's Cypher. Revelation. Cypher is now Revelation. Cypher is now the current heir to Apocalypse, and so Revelation has its own book, and it's kind of too much now too. Where they're going to have it set 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years in the future, and it's going to be bleak and depressing. And I have another entire piece about I don't like the blank kills the entire Marvel universe books. I really don't. And that's what those crossovers kind of feel like. So anyway, I don't like characters with vaguely defined powers. It grinds my gears. Because when we have powers without rules, it just allows for anything to fucking happen. Just anything can happen. This guy can literally do anything. You make characters into walking plot devices. Okay. It got really bad during when they brought in the Iraqi mutants, because there was Krakoa and Arakko, and Krakoa and Arakko used to be one island. They were separated through the Twilight Sword, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, and then they became two entities. And Arakko existed in an alternate dimension, and all the characters there in that dimension had to fight a horde of demons. I think something along those lines. It was a lot. It was a lot of stuff going on in that. But when they introduced the Arakko mutants, one of the things that they did was they said, okay, we have to establish them as a legitimate threat to the X-Men, because we have X-Men that can literally rewrite reality. What's a general threat to them? Well, why don't we bring in mutants that are not only immortal, but have been fighting wars for millennia, and they're battle hardened in a way that the current X-Men are not. And also we're gonna throw Apocalypse into this backstory. It'll be something he's never mentioned before. The fact that he has a wife and kids, and he actually comes from this other dimension. And yeah, but that's gonna be a tie-in for him. And when we introduce Genesis, who was Apocalypse's wife or ex-wife, she's going to be vastly more powerful than he is. Oh, okay, let's see where this is going. And so, what if we introduced a segment of mutants where everybody is Omega powered, like they're Omega level? And for those that don't know, if you don't know, in Marvel, it used to be, and I'm spitballing here, and I know somebody's going to correct me. It used to be initially when they said Omega level mutant, this means that somebody's whose powers allow them to exist without their physical body, like their powers made them functionally immortal. Okay. And they could regenerate their body or exist without their body. Or they had the powers to rewrite reality or some kind of way over the top thing. But initially, when they said Omega level mutants, we were talking about like Jean Grey, Bobby Drake as Iceman, because Iceman can exist without his body, and a couple of others. And then they kind of expanded the meaning of Omega level to include massively overpowered mutants, where they have the ability to destroy planets or whatever. And that's kind of where Storm kind of filtered in. And then you bring in a character like Vulcan, who is essentially, to me, Vulcan is like the Superboy Prime of the Marvel universe. Just a character who is just a giant nuke that when you drop him in a story, that's his role, to be the nuke that everybody has to defuse. And then they end up diffusing him, and then they go put him on the shelf for another couple of years. That's how Vulcan gets treated. He's kind of like the Superboy Prime of the Marvel universe. Not necessarily written well. He's just a weapon that they bring out every once in a while. But they expanded that meaning of Omega level mutant to encompass more powers, just massively overpowered mutants, right? Okay, I can ride with that, right? Initially, it was people that exist without their body. And that's how powerful they were. Like death wouldn't stop them. And now we're moving into just massively powered on levels that can wreak havoc on a planetary scale. And so I'm going to pull up Marvel's current definition of Omega level mutant. Forgive me. I want to get their current definition because it's shifted throughout the years. It truly has. So now, Omega level right now, because it used to be something else, but now there's no measurable upper limit to their powers or abilities. Okay, that's a bigger net that they're casting, that you can include in that thing. So it's going to be Storm, Jean Grey, Magneto in terms of Magneto in terms of power, magnetism. For some reason, they have Emma Frost on here. I don't necessarily know Emma Frost as an Omega level mutant. I've never heard her mentioned in that. I know I have had Proteus mentioned in there because Proteus is a reality warper. Kid Omega, Quid Omega / Quid Inquire is kind of in that Omega level. Matthew and Jamie Braddock specifically is a reality warper. Matthew Malloy is a reality warper. David Haller, Legion, literally has a legion of power. Like he has thousands of powers, depending on what his personality is. Mr. M is a reality warper. And so now we're in that place. Okay, so there's no defined upper limit. Okay, I'm fine with it. I'll ride with it because I know that this stuff evolves throughout the years. Then it got revised. Hickman kind of revised it, and introduced new Omega level mutants. And that's where the wheels started falling off of the term for me. I'll be honest with you. It started falling off the term around the Araco time. Around the time where Araco kind of stepped onto the scene, and those mutants from Araco in the Marvel Universe were introduced, and they were all introduced as Omega level mutants. And you start going through the list of who these people are. And I guess for me, okay, I'm gonna jump back a little bit, because one of the ones I did need to mention was, like, when I talk about vaguely defined powers, I'm talking about a character like Zorn. A character like Zorn from the X-Men. And I think he was a Morrison. Yeah, he was made by Grant Morrison. And Zorn's ability has been all over the place. Like, it's been all over the place, literally. He had a star for a head. His head was a star. That was Zorn's power. His head was a star. I don't know what powers that give you, but his head was a star. And so they kept adding stuff to his power set. And I'm like, so what does it have to do with his head being a star? So he could form a black hole with his face. But then also, he can control magnetic fields. Okay, that makes sense. Stars have gigantic magnetic fields. If he has a star for a head and he can collapse it at will, okay, magnetic fields, that makes sense. Light generation stars are bright. Okay. Gravity. Okay, we'll ride with that one, because stars' sense of gravity around stars, blah blah. Depth perception. He can sense when a death has occurred in his vicinity. What does it have to do with his powers, bro? What does it have to do with having a star for a face? And here's the thing. I'm giving a lot of credit because I'm in the Marvel Wiki reading this. And in the Marvel Wiki, they have it laid out, right? Like, it's laid out here. But they've added to this throughout the years. Because initially, Zorn's powers were whatever the writer wanted them to be. To the point where, for a while, Magneto was Zorn. And they didn't know, like, he was masquerading as Zorn. And there were huge holes like, I didn't know he could do. How did he do that? Well, he used his magnetism powers. How? And so Zorn kind of got put on the shelf, but then they brought Zorn back. And they gave him his powers and they added more stuff onto it. And he's been super confusing ever since, bro. Nobody really knows what Zorn's powers are. You can read the wiki, but that's not always what his powers have been. And it's one of those Grant Morrison things where Grant Morrison will bring in characters. Grant Morrison will create characters and give them powers that really they make sense in his brain. They don't make sense in anybody else's brain, but he's such a good writer that people just kind of ride with it. Like in Final Crisis, where Superman, the way he dispelled Darkseid was he sang a note really high pitched, and it shattered the essence of Darkseid. What? What does that mean? When did Superman get that power, bro? It's like the Golden Age Superman, where they would just literally give Superman powers just to advance the story, just so that he can wrap it up. Well, Superman can make super clones, and he has a super kiss that can wipe out Lois's memory of him being Superman. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's what they run with. So I'm pivoting back here. So in the Araco era, a lot of those Omega level mutants that were introduced, they had those really vaguely, loosely defined powers. And I really do feel like it was an issue of, because it used to be what the Marvel way of writing a book was, they would deliver you panels of art and you would just put words around them to make it make sense. And I almost feel like, to a degree, some of that may have happened because they're like, here's a cool looking character over there standing in the corner. We need to give them a name and a power set. And that's how it landed. So I'm going to go through some of these. Some of these make sense. Some of them sound like they're Omega level and I can kind of ride with it. There's one or two on here that absolutely are egregious. And I will not let this pass, that they're Omega level mutants, because it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to jump around because the first one on the list is the one I wanted to talk about. But there was Lactuca the Knower. Like Tuca knows where everything is in the universe. That's what their power is. They know where everything is. Okay. Lotus Logos. He makes metal. He can generate metal with his body, and generate large amounts of metal. Okay. Subanar of the Depths. I think that's what his name is. I think that was the full name. Has oceanic blood and has an entire oceanic ecosystem in his body. I know he can control water, but I don't really quite know what power that is. Like you have an ecosystem in your, he has an entire oceanic ecosystem in his body. Yes, he can bring water back to planets that are stricken in drought. So basically, he can help terraform planets. Okay, that's reaching Omega level. I'll ride with it. I don't quite know what the ecosystem in the chest, but I'll ride with it. Orosorata is Omega level, but they just decided that their power, just randomly said, well, it's not going to work on this. Orosorata's gaze can erase beings out of existence. I'll allow for that. I will allow for that, except for one really notable exception. So I'm going to type up Thanos's grandpa. And it's not really his grandpa, it's his granduncle, but he calls him grandfather. Is Uranos, who is one of the Eternals that's in the exclusion. And Uranos is basically Thanos on steroids. Like an ultra powerful, unfadable version of Thanos in every way, shape, and form. All of his stats are through the roof. He's unkillable, unlimited strength, but then also has an arsenal that can level a planet within seconds. Matter manipulation, extreme durability, telepathy. As an Eternal, he's immortal, can fly at great speeds, energy projection, all the basic lines of the Eternals that cranked up to a bajillion. So Orosorata, whose power is they can gaze you out of existence. They can look at you and you cease to exist. That's what their power is, right? They look at you and you cease to exist. But then Uranus came through and Uranus is like, nah. And the power stopped working. Like, so they could erase living beings with their gaze, but Uranus wasn't, yeah, all right, cool, whatever. That feels like plot devicey, but it is what it is. Tarn the Uncaring. I kind of understand Tarn the Uncaring. Genetic, he can manipulate genetic material. And I get it. I get it. Just I do not. And yes, they're carnivorous. Yes, they can devour people. Yes. Is that an Omega level power? Is that Omega level? I'm sorry, is that Omega level? Is that how it works now? The one I'm coming back to. Hydra the Seer. So they have precognition, so they can see anything that's happening. So yes, that can be very powerful. But there's so many precogs in the Marvel universe. What makes their precognition any stronger than like Destiny? Boy, this live stream is snake bit, bro. My browser crashed, so I don't know if y'all got any of that, and I don't know how long I was off for. So I might have to redo a lot of this, just because. Yeah, I may have to redo a lot of this live stream just because I don't know where I went. I don't know how long I was off air. I don't know when the browser crashed. StreamYard ain't making his case, bro. And it's not making his case now. Like it's just a mess. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes. But I will review the video and kind of see. I'm moving on to the next thing. So the next topic I have, the Sidney Sweeney ad. It's just stupid, and I'm kind of running this together because I was going to do a specific segment about Cracker Barrel on and of itself. But I'm putting these two things together. It's stupid. It really is stupid. It's fake right-wing outrage talking points just to get some clicks on the internet. And so one of the things about the Sidney Sweeney thing is when I saw the ad, when I saw the Sidney Sweeney has great genes ad, instantly me and my wife were like, so y'all have this Aryan looking white woman talking about has great genes, great genetic material, great genes. There's a blonde hair, blue eye, white lady on here. Okay, I see where this is going. I peeped the game and I knew what it was. I didn't get mad about it. I just knew what they were doing. But for a lot of people that misunderstood what that was, because there's a lot of people that intentionally misunderstood what this entire thing was about. The Sidney Sweeney has great genes thing. And they even showed the text exchange that kind of set this thing up. The text exchange that set this whole thing up was, we're going to do something that's going to cause controversy and spark conversation and whatnot. So it was intentional. They knew what they were doing. They knew exactly how people will react to it. And they went in and did it anyway. So for me, it is what it is. So it means if y'all intended to spark the discussion about it, that means that you knew some of the racial dynamics of it. You knew the racial dynamics of, we're having this Aryan looking white lady. So yeah. So my issue with it is, I'm at a point now where the gaslighting piece, it happens. And I just kind of rolled the punches for the gaslighting. But I do want to say, I peeped the game. Me and my wife kind of saw it like, oh, that's what this is about. We knew that this is the Aryan looking lady, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she has great genes Okay, whatever. Of course, we knew the conservative sphere was going to take it and run with it. So the double meaning is genetically superior. And if you look on the racist side of Twitter, which is pretty much all of Twitter right now, you're going to see a lot of the white nationalists. When this came out, a lot of the white nationalists took it and ran with it and said, haha, this blonde hair, blue eye. They're jealous of her. These dark skinned people are jealous of her beauty and blah, 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 like this. All right, cool. So imagine if we put Lupita or Kelly Rowland or Nafessa Williams or Coco Jones in the Sidney Sweeney ad and talked about how they had great genes. Imagine what that would have looked like. Imagine how the internet would have responded to that. Imagine how Fox News would have responded to that. If you put even just a brown-skinned black woman in that ad talking about she has great genes. There have been pictures of monkeys all over Twitter. They would not know how to act. They would not know how to act. Because they almost lost their mind with the Beyonce Levi's ad. If you put a brown-skinned black woman in that Sidney Sweeney ad and talk about she has great genes, you're going to see some of the most unhinged racism that you will ever see. And that same group of people that don't understand why people are mad about it are going to look the other way or disavow it like it's not a thing that happens. The reaction wouldn't be fun wordplay if you put in a black woman into that Sidney Sweeney ad. It would be some of the ugliest racism you've ever seen. It would be, you would see Simpson trial levels of racism, just free floating racial hostility, just floating around in the air. Like I said, gorilla memes, we'll see hair insults, we'll see talking about how ugly they are, all this other crazy stuff. And so for me, I know what the game is, bro. And I think the company that did it knew what it was. And I think Sidney on the level knew what it was. Okay. there's a celebration of beauty when it comes to beauty aesthetics. There's a celebration of your Eurocentric features, and when you abandon that and start drifting towards other beauty standards, that's when the real comes out. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that, and I feel like I'm probably going to be recovering a lot of this next week because I don't know how much of my live stream actually went out live. But yeah, the receipts would be like if they put Serena Williams in that or Lupita or Michelle Obama, like let's look at the backlash historically. Serena Williams got some of the ugliest racism that we've ever seen. Misgendered her, called her all kinds of animals and all kinds of other stuff. They had racist cartoons and newspapers and stuff played as a joke. Lupita, they were late. There was, I forgot, I got to pull up the magazine and I don't have time to do it. But they erased her hair out of a magazine. They told her that she's too dark to find a husband. Like crazy shit. Michelle Obama, bro. I was working at a Catholic organization. I cannot tell you the kind of race, like the racism I saw was off the hook. Like it was absolutely insane, over the top, nuts level racism regarding Michelle Obama. Some of the ugliest things about that woman, some of the ugliest things about their children who had really nothing to do with any of the vitriol, but they still got it. And so when I see people making fun of Trump's adult kids, I sit there and look at how they made fun of Obama's children because they were really children. And I don't have a ton of sympathy. 2 rights don't make a wrong, but 3 rights make a left. 2 rights make a left. Right. So anyway, this isn't hypothetical. We've seen it every time Black women are centered in some kind of presented as ambassador, spokesperson for something. The racism just flows out, and there's always a group of people that are conditioned to ignore it because it's not targeted toward them, so they have the ability and capacity to ignore it like it's not a thing that is because it doesn't target them, so they can ignore it and pretend like it doesn't happen. The only reason that Sidney Sweeney ad works is because she's white. That's literally the only reason. Right. You know, so there's a couple other points I want to make, but I'm going to skip my Thomas Sowell because I think it deserves more time for me to really get pissed off about him. And I'm going to jump right into the main point I wanted to talk about tonight. So I tried, y'all. I was going to watch the Jubilee thing. And I normally don't watch I'll watch the highlights of the Jubilee thing, but I can't really mainline that stuff. But I tried to watch the Amanda Seales Jubilee, a Black radical, with a bunch of Black conservatives. And I understand that the term radical has been co-opted or whatnot. I'm not here to debate that. But compared to what was in the room, Amanda Seales is like Huey P. Newton compared to what was in that room. Now, here's what my issue with the entire Jubilee thing is. I got 5 minutes. I got 5 or 10 minutes into it. And what we saw was the first dude sat down and he just started this monologue with her. Like he's just railing off points, firing them rapid fire, not really giving her any room to answer. And it's a debate tactic. It's the Gish Gallop, where the person you're arguing with, the person you're arguing or debating with, hits you with a trillion facts, a trillion talking points at light speed, and expects you to react to every single one of them individually. And if you miss any of them, if you misspeak on any of them, then that invalidates your entire argument. And that's the concept behind it. That's what he tried to do. And she had to call him out on it. And so I watched that. And then they bring out dude who has this chain. And he was insufferable. And then they bring out little young dude. And this is as far as I got into this younger dude. And he basically said redlining didn't exist because he didn't believe in redlining. And that's why I turned it off. I said, I can't do this. So I was going to do a whole breakdown of this, but out of fairness, I'm not going to review the entire piece because I didn't watch the entire piece. And I may not ever get through the entire piece because it's infuriating to watch, not just because of the racial conversations around it with the Black conservatives, but just the framing of the arguments. And it goes to my larger point of discourse in this country is cooked. Political discourse in this country is cooked. And when I say that, I mean it's cooked because it's turned into a contest of who can give the most entertaining argument. It's not about right. It's not about what's right. It's about who can give the most entertaining argument. And I'm thoroughly convinced that Jubilee is agitation propaganda. Like, I think the CIA funds it. I think the CIA funds it. I think they got a budget, a budget that goes to it, off the books kind of budget to fund these Jubilee episodes, because some of the shit that they do on there and some of the people they have on there, these can't be real people, bro. Like, these cannot be real human beings out existing in the world with other human beings, bro. And so I went to Jubilee's page, and one of the things I discovered is they actually have casting calls for these Jubilee things. And so when we start talking about casting calls, what happens is, when you're doing a casting call, you're going to bring in the person that's going to look the best on camera. And you're going to bring in the person that you think has the most compelling personality that people are going to watch. You're not going to bring in the person that is the most educated or most aware of the topic or anything. And so that's who gets put in those chairs. Who's the most entertaining to watch? Who's going to get dunked all over by whoever's in that chair? Or who's going to say something quippy that's going to go viral? And that's how they kind of determine who gets into those seats. And so instantly, the entire concept of debate is cooked, because that's not what debate is. That's not how what debate is about. I feel like it's propaganda, because understand the mechanism of propaganda isn't necessarily to convert people. It's to get it disseminated to as many people as possible. So when we talk about, like, because one of the things I used to say was, I used to have an issue with Real Time with Bill Maher when he would platform. And I fuck Bill Maher. Like, I don't like Bill Maher, right? I don't like the dude. I've been off Bill Maher for almost 10 years now. But one of the things I used to say was, he brings on these extremists and he just lets them talk. And then he does his little, I'm the smart white guy in the room, and I'm gonna make fun of you and make you look like an idiot. And the audience laughs, or the dude that they plant in the audience starts laughing, because that's how they do it. They plant a dude in the audience. He starts laughing, get the audience laughing, because Bill don't be funny a lot of times. And that's just how it goes. But he brings on these extremists, brings them on there, soft pedals them, and then dunks on them or says something pithy, and the audience gets their little laughs off. And the person that they brought on just sits there and folds their arms and kind of look, mission accomplished. Because the idea isn't the fact that they're going to go on Bill Maher's show and debate him and prove what they're saying. Their goal is to just get on the air so that they can be exposed to as many people as possible. That's the function of propaganda. That's how propaganda works. It's not about converting people. It's about reaching as many people as possible. And in that, you're going to influence a specific number of people just by being visible. So that's why deplatforming white nationalists is important, not platforming them in the first place. And so when Jubilee had that dude on there saying, I'm a fascist, I guess, he got his message out there to his people. He was able to get a successful GoFundMe running off of that. And it wasn't about winning or how he looked. He reached a lot of people. That's the function of propaganda. It is not about presenting the best argument. It's not about compelling people with your argument skills, your argumentation skills. It truly is about getting as many people to see you as humanly possible. That's what it is. So I strongly believe that Jubilee is there's a CIA fund set aside for Jubilee. Okay. They manufacture the conflict of one black radical versus 20 conservatives. Next one is, I think this coming up, black men versus black women. That's going to be the apocalypse on Twitter, and I'm going to avoid Twitter for next week when that thing drops, because it's going to be it's going to be terrible. It's going to actually do real harm. Like this is we're talking about like you know, this is actually going to do real harm to discourse. But the topics are engineered and it's just heat. There's no resolution. Nobody's enlightened. Nobody sees a different point of view. Even the viewers aren't really shifted by it. But one of the things I did realize is watching this, and a lot of it is even just interfacing with Black conservatives online, in the online space. This idea of being contrarianism, where people's personality is, I just do the opposite of what everybody else does. I believe the opposite of what everybody else believes, and I just do the opposite. It's the Kanye thing, where there's no evidence of if taking the opposite stand is a good thing. I'm just going to do it because that's what I do. Is I'm Mr. Opposite. I take the opposite side of things. That's contrarianism. And often Black conservatism often falls in that because a lot of it is it becomes a personality thing, and it becomes a way for a Black conservative to say, I'm better than you because I don't act like the rest of you, kind of thing. And that's the struggle that they're having internally with themselves. But then it gets generalized to us, like it's externalized to us. Even though this is an internal struggle they have with themselves, I have to show that I am not Black like you. I'm a better Black than you. I'm a different kind of Black. Okay. One of my issues with the Jubilee thing is it's mockery as currency. So it creates an entire breed of, because when I went and looked at it, when I looked at the reaction videos, because that's where you see how people respond to it. All the reaction videos had Amanda Seales looking crazy, and they were like, basically uppity Black gets put in her place by 20 Black conservatives. Ghetto Black gets put. It's dog whistle racism, which is the worst kind of racism to me, where you're going to pretend like it's not racist. We all know what the score is, and so, but each video was this commentator taking down her, but without her being in the studio with them. So she wasn't able to defend herself. They're just taking her down because that's what their side wants to do. And it happens on the other side too. It's not discourse. It's just clickbait. You clickbait to see people react. You clickbait to see people who agree with you. And it doesn't promote any kind of understanding or expansion or anything. It literally quite is it's clickbaity bullshit. The thumbnails, if you go through, if you type in Amanda Seales Jubilee reaction, you're going to see some of the most racist thumbnails you've ever seen. Crazy. A lot of times when it comes to Black conservatism, I found this, but the audience requires mocking Black folks who disagree with you. They can't have an intelligent conversation with you without going into the name calling, without belittling your intelligence. If you disagree with a lot of conservatives, the first point they're going to hit, and I've experienced this as a Black person, the first point they're going to say is, one of the first things they're going to say is you're acting like a victim. The second part is they're going to attack your intelligence. Tale as old as time. They won't talk to you point by point. They'll go for those things because those are things that they can hit, and they're vague enough where it's really left to somebody's interpretation of what your intelligence is, if that makes sense. We can debate facts all the time. We can talk about the truth, how truthworthy or how truthful a statement is. Like we can validate that. We can demonstrate that. But when you start attacking somebody's intelligence, you can't necessarily define that outside of what they say. And if the stuff that makes you doubt my intelligence is stuff that just disagrees with you, you're not doubting my intelligence, you're doubting my capacity to agree with you. And inherently, that's not a measure of anybody's intelligence. I don't need you to agree with me for me to see you as an intelligent person. I really don't care. How well can you form a coherent argument around what your point is? If you can't form a coherent argument, that's what I judge. But that's what this kind of discourse does. It's just there for somebody to mock and make fun of. And insults equal intellectual capital. It's the weirdest thing. So watching the Black conservatives movement, I've only seen like the first three of them. Watching how they move around, The dude with the Israel necklace he was going to defend them people's honor. He's going to 10 toes down. He's going to fight on behalf of them people. And black folks don't respect that. White folks don't respect that. Nobody respects that, bro. But that's what he was going to do. And then they end up aligning with the white conservatives who mock them anyway. Like, they make fun of them anyway. Nick Fuentes will call you a sellout. Like, he knows the deal. Like, he's not stupid. He may be a little neo-Nazi, but he knows sellouts when he sees them. And he calls them. Like, he does it all the time. I've seen him do it. So for me, the entire construct of Jubilee, it's supposed to be mainstreaming conservative or debate. It really doesn't. It's not mainstreaming a debate. What it is mainstreaming this argumentation as sport, where one side wins and one side loses. You could have a winner and a loser. And the winner isn't the person that actually has the most factual arguments. The person that has the most entertaining argument. The way that they can if they can phrase it in the most entertaining way possible, then they have an argument. My other contention is they're not bringing in educated people. They're bringing in people that want to be influencers. And they're trying to build their platform by being featured on Jubilee, because a couple of people have parlayed their Jubilee appearances into social media platforms and ongoing things and ongoing podcasts and live streams for themselves. I'm not hating on the game, but that's really what it is. It's not bringing in people that know. It's people that are looking to climb, and Jubilee is a spotlight for them. That's why they have casting. Really insidious shit. And I'm kind of fascinated by it, just from like a Car Crash TV, Jerry Springer level of, being from that era. But I'm also put off by it because I do think that it is actively one of the four horsemen of killing discourse in America, even though I think it's been dead for a while. So I'm wrapping up. I will have my little thing about saying fuck Thomas Sowell. I'll do that next week because I want to spend some time talking about it, and I need to see where this live stream stopped, where it cut out, and stuff like that. So, in summation, if you see this, give me a like. Go ahead and follow for more content like this. I'm going to be moving to Patreon, so you'll be seeing me on there. If I can get my next TikTok follower, my last TikTok follower, I can start live streaming on TikTok, so I'll be on there too. And I do appreciate y'all's time. Thanks for tuning in. I need to see where we're at and see how much I got for this week. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.